Ever wonder what it takes to turn a hunk of metal, like, into a perfectly straight component?
Mm,
We're talking about those folks behind the scenes, right?
right.
The ones who make sure everything from bridges to bikes have those smooth, strong metal parts.
Yeah.
So today's deep dive, it's all about the straightening machine operator.
Okay.
We're going straight to the source for this one, using insights straight from RoleCatcher's career library.
Always a good source.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So they describe it as a role that combines, like, brain and brawn.
It really is. Yeah. You're not just pushing buttons. It's almost like you're whispering to the metal,
Interesting.
understanding its limits and coaxing it into shape.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher mentions this thing called, get this, yield strength.
Yeah.
And it just sounds so much cooler than your average physics term, you know? What's the deal with that?
So yield strength is basically a material's breaking point,
Okay.
but not exactly in the way you might think, like snapping in half. Imagine you have a metal ruler, right? You can bend it a little,
Mm-hmm.
and it springs back. But if you bend it too far, past its yield strength,
Uh-huh.
it's deformed, maybe forever. Now, picture that ruler as a giant beam for, say, a skyscraper.
Whoa.
And suddenly you can see why understanding yield strength is absolutely crucial for a straightening machine operator.
So it's like knowing exactly how far to push it without causing, like, a total metal meltdown?
Right.
RoleCatcher seems to think these skills are in super high demand right now.
They are.
Good pay, job security, that's the dream.
Yeah, those are some seriously attractive benefits. And RoleCatcher highlights, the growing need for these skilled tradespeople.
Okay.
But, and this is important, it's not always easy.
Right.
Think about the environment for a second. The constant noise of machinery, potential sparks flying, and physically demanding work, handling heavy materials?
Yeah, definitely not your average desk job.
Not at all.
You'd need a certain level of, I don't know, grit, resilience maybe, to thrive in that kind of environment, right?
You hit the nail on the head. It's not just physical strength either.
Oh,
It's about mental focus, too. Unwavering attention to detail.
I see.
Even a small lapse in concentration, it can have, well, serious consequences.
Wow, okay. So RoleCatcher mentions that experience seems to be, like, the most important thing when it comes to actually getting a job in this field, right?
It's interesting. Formal education, it isn't always the main requirement.
Really?
Practical skills, those are what really matter.
Huh.
Think apprenticeships, entry-level positions, anything where you can really get your hands dirty.
Ah, I see.
Learn the ropes from those experienced operators.
So you're saying it's more about showing up, putting in the work, and actually learning the craft from the ground up.
Precisely.
Okay, so you've convinced me experience is like the golden ticket in this field.
Definitely.
But what does that actually, look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what a straightening machine operator actually does.
Okay, so picture this. You're in a bustling manufacturing facility, right?
Right.
There's that rhythmic clang of machinery all around you, the scent of metal in the air. It's a whole sensory experience.
I bet.
You might be working independently or, as part of a well-coordinated team. It really depends.
Okay.
But one thing's for sure, there's a real sense of purpose. You're contributing to something tangible,
Yeah. It's like the difference between reading about a recipe and actually, like, rolling up your sleeves and baking a cake.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, what are some of the first things a straightening machine operator actually tackles during their, like, shift?
Well, before you even touch a piece of metal, you're setting up the straightening machine itself.
Oh, okay.
It's making sure those massive rollers are calibrated just right to the precise angle, the height. It's a little like tuning a giant instrument to make sure it hits all the right notes.
Interesting.
And then comes the real artistry of it,
Okay, this is where it gets good.
Yeah. It's using your knowledge of all those different metals, their yield strengths, and then you apply just the right amount of pressure.
Okay, yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher, they briefly mention these, like, technical drawings that guide the process.
Right. Blueprints.
Yeah, blueprints.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a bit of, like, detective work involved too, right?
Absolutely. Think of those technical drawings like, as I said, blueprints.
Okay.
Detailed instructions, They tell you exactly how to transform that raw material into the specific shape you need.
Got it.
But you need to be able to, decipher those blueprints.
Okay.
Understand the tolerances, the acceptable margins of error.
Right.
And then make sure that the finished product aligns perfectly with those specifications.
So you're not just straightening metal, you're kind of bringing someone else's vision to life.
Yeah.
Like, you're a metal artisan.
That's a great way to put it.
But it can't be like, smooth sailing all the time,
Yeah.
right? What happens when things don't go exactly according to plan?
That's where those problem-solving skills really come in handy.
Okay.
Let's say a piece of metal, it just doesn't straighten as expected.
Mm.
Now you've got to put on your detective hat, right?
Right, right.
Figure out, is it the machine? Is it the metal itself? Or maybe, just maybe, it's a really subtle error in the blueprint. It requires a keen eye for detail, a logical mind, and, importantly, the ability to adapt on the fly.
Wow. So there's a lot more like mental agility involved than you might think, right?
There really is.
It's not just about physical strength, it's about like mental stamina too.
It's a mental workout sometimes, for sure.
But let's talk about those times when everything goes right,
The good times.
Yeah. You straighten the metal perfectly, it meets all the specs, what's next? What happens then?
Quality control.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Every single piece has to be meticulously checked, inspected for any imperfections. Even a tiny scratch, a slight bend, anything that doesn't meet those exacting standards.
Talk about attention to detail.
It's absolutely crucial. After all, the quality of your work, it directly impacts the safety and integrity of the final product.
Right, right.
I mean, you might be straightening a part that goes into an airplane wing or a surgical tool. The stakes can be high.
That's a huge responsibility.
It is.
It sounds like there's a certain level of like pride that comes with this job.
Oh, absolutely.
Knowing that your work has like a real world impact.
100%. And, as you gain experience, you might find yourself drawn to a specific area. RoleCatcher mentions opportunities for specialization.
Oh, cool.
You could become a welding expert, a master of a particular type of straightening technique,
Yeah.
or even transition into more of a supervisory role where you're guiding and mentoring newer operators.
Wow, so there's room to grow, to specialize, to really make this career like your own. But let's say someone listening, they're just starting out.
Okay.
What advice would you give them? Like, what are some like tangible steps they can take to actually break into this field?
Well, RoleCatcher, they really emphasize the importance of getting your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to start with an apprenticeship, even an entry-level position.
So it's all about those real-world skills we were talking about.
Precisely. And even though, a formal education, it might not always be a requirement, definitely consider taking courses.
Okay, like what?
Oh, metalworking, blueprint reading, maybe even some basic machine maintenance.
Okay.
Those are the kinds of skills that can give you a real edge.
It's like building your own toolkit, right?
Yes.
Equipping yourself with the knowledge and experience to really succeed.
I like that, yeah.
And I imagine networking is probably crucial in a field like this too, right?
You're absolutely right. Attend industry events, join some online forums, just connect with other people who are already doing what you aspire to do. You never know where that next opportunity is going to come from.
So it's a combination of those hands-on skills, a willingness to learn, and like you said, building a strong network.
It's a recipe for success, definitely.
Okay, so a winning formula for any aspiring straightening machine operator, for sure. But let's be honest, technology, it's changing every industry these days,
Well,
right?
it really is.
So is there still a place for straightening machine operators in a world of like automation and robots?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And RoleCatcher, they offer some really, really interesting insights.
Okay.
While it's true that automation is definitely changing how manufacturing works, it's not necessarily a threat like people think.
Oh,
In fact, it can create even more opportunities.
okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about this whole robot revolution.
All right, so we're seeing more and more advanced straightening machines. They're equipped with these things called CNC systems. That stands for computer numerical control.
Okay.
Think of it like this: the machine itself, it's becoming smarter, more sophisticated. It can handle more precise and complex tasks with actually less hands-on input from the operator.
So instead of replacing the operator, technology is actually becoming more like a high-tech partner.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But, and this is important, to really thrive in this evolving landscape, a straightening machine operator, they have to evolve too, right alongside that technology.
So you're saying robots aren't coming for their jobs, they're just changing the job description a bit.
Precisely. Knowing how to operate those CNC machines, how to program them, troubleshoot any issues, those are the skills that'll set someone apart in the future.
So it's not about fearing the robots, it's about learning to work with them, right?
Exactly. Embrace the tech.
I like it. But, with all this talk about CNC systems and, like, super precise technical drawings,
Right.
it makes you wonder, what about, like, the human element?
Ah, good question.
What about those qualities you can't really teach, the ones that make someone a truly, exceptional straightening machine operator?
You've hit on something really important. We've talked a lot about the technical stuff for sure.
Hmm.
Those are essential, don't get me wrong. But those are really just the foundation, the real magic. It comes from, well, the personality, the mindset,
Okay.
the passion you bring to the job.
So what I'm hearing is it takes a certain kind of person to really thrive in this environment, right?
I think so.
Someone who doesn't just, like, understand the mechanics of it all,
Mm-hmm.
but also has, I don't know, the right temperament.
Exactly. Think about it. You're working with heavy machinery, often under pressure, tight deadlines,
Right.
and precision is absolutely key.
Yeah.
That takes a certain blend of, well, patience, focus, and that inner drive to get it right every single time.
So maybe, like, someone who enjoys the focus of a repetitive task,
Could be.
but can also, like, switch gears and troubleshoot when something unexpected happens.
You're spot on. It's that ability to be both meticulous and adaptable.
Yeah.
That's what sets someone apart. And let's not forget problem solving.
Right, of course.
Facing a challenge, finding a solution, that's a huge part of the job satisfaction, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's like you're solving a metal puzzle, right?
I like that.
You mentioned passion earlier.
Yeah.
How important is that really in a job like this?
Oh, passion is what makes a job a calling.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine you take this raw, unwieldy piece of metal and you shape it into something precise, essential,
Mm-hmm.
something that's actually part of the world around us.
It's like you're not just straightening metal, you're shaping possibility.
Exactly. And that sense of purpose, the pride in your craft, that's what makes all the difference.
I love that. So as we kind of like wrap up our deep dive into this whole world of the straightening machine operator.
Yeah.
What's the one thing, the one like nugget of wisdom you really hope our listeners take away from this?
Don't underestimate the power of, combining a skilled trade with a curious mind
Okay.
and a willingness to embrace those new technologies.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens.
That's it. That's where the magic happens, not just in metalworking, but honestly in any career path you choose.
Words to live by.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to RoleCatcher for, providing all those amazing insights that made this deep dive possible.
They're the best.
Definitely. And to our listeners, until next time, stay curious.